Hey, hello, good evening, and welcome to OpenMicVO. We get together on Sunday nights as a group, as a community, to talk about, topics of interest to voice actors. And tonight, our little call-in show is open. So we have no specific theme, no specific topic. Any questions, any comments you might have about the voiceover business, whether it's performance related, maybe it's got something to do with your home studio. Maybe you've got questions with regards to business development or questions about a specific genre like animation or audiobooks. Any questions at all about the voiceover business, we're happy to entertain tonight. Just a couple of housekeeping rules I want to run past you before we get started. There's only 3 of them. It just takes a second. Number 1, please keep yourself muted unless you're actively participating in the conversation. I certainly don't want to dissuade you from participating. And please unmute yourself and ask questions or add commentary whenever you possibly can. But if you're not actively participating, if you keep yourself muted, it means we have a lot less problems with echo and feedback and background noise. The second thing I just want to remind you of is that we're all professionals here, and I expect everyone to be nice to each other. So please, this is about positivity. It's about looking forward. It's about helping people. It's about giving back. So please, no negative comments or negative opinions directed either at anyone here in the community or at anyone outside of this call. And the third thing is that I record OpenMicVO and it gets posted to YouTube. That way, people who wanted to attend tonight and couldn't are able to have a listen to it on YouTube. There's also, on occasion, you might want to go back and have a listen as well. So it gets posted to YouTube. Keep that in mind in case you provide any sort of information tonight that could be considered proprietary or confidential. Once the episode gets posted to YouTube, really have no control over where that might end up. So once again, tonight we're talking about any topic having to do or relating to voiceover. So if you have a question about the voiceover business, no matter whether you're a newbie or you are an experienced voice actor and just want to solicit some opinions from others in the biz, anything is fair game tonight. So I'm going to start unmuting people one by one. Again, please remember to mute yourself using the little microphone icon, which appears in the lower left-hand corner of your Zoom meeting window. Just mute yourself if you're not going to be asking the first question. So just starting to unmute here. So again, once you see that you're unmuted, if you want to get us started with the first question tonight, that'd be awesome.
Hello, Graham. This is Steve. Can you hear me?
Hey, Steve. How are you tonight?
Fine, sir. I got a question for you about recording your demo for audiobooks. Where do I go to find a male-female dialogue audiobook? Or a book for a script? Do I just run down to Barnes and Noble and just dig around?
There are some guidelines on the types of books that you should be using in order to create audio demos. And I know that actually, you know who's on the line with us tonight is Carol Monda, who is a prolific audiobook narrator and a coach as well in the audiobook genre. Carol, talk to us about how to choose the right books for your demo.
I can only discuss your hat. I'm sorry at the moment. So fantastic. You look great. Happy Earth Day. Happy Hot Day.
It's nice to hear from you.
It's great to see and hear from you. I would say, generally the industry standard has always been to do 3 pieces that comprise fiction with a man and a woman in dialogue, a nonfiction, and what they would call a niche, not niche because we're in America, at least some of us are. So we have to use the American pronunciation. So a niche genre, which can be anything that really is just not mainstream. In other words, not romance, not mystery, not just standard dramatic fiction. A niche would be something like self-help or inspirational or sci-fi or young adult fantasy, that kind of thing. And generally, it's great to just use books that are fairly recently published. 2 of the 3 of them should probably still be written by an author of the same gender as the narrator. But that is less and less important as long as the focus of the piece is not, if let's say I were to do a demo, I wouldn't choose something that was basically about a guy for that 3 to 5 minutes. It could certainly include allusions and even descriptions of a guy, but probably from the perspective of the female who's discussing him, if that makes sense.
And what about this whole area of the male-female dialogue thing? How important is it to include it? And is there anything other than try and pick a book that's written by the same sex that you are when you're narrating? Anything else, any other guidance with regards to male-female dialogue?
Sure. First of all, the question, how important is it? I would say that if nothing else, if you did 5, pieces from the 1800s that were all from the perspective of a guy and you're a woman, that still, if you had a man and a woman in dialogue, that would be, the seminal aspect. They really, really, really want to hear how you handle, both genders in a dialogue. But there are also people who want to do only nonfiction or only children's books. Even then, though, I would say that like you'd want a children's selection that has a boy and a girl, talking. Ideally, but then regarding the gender thing, it really is less and less important. We're noticing in the last 5 years that many narrators are being given jobs, to do a piece written by, let's say, for me, a man would write it, but it's either a story that is basically about a woman or has enough of, a kind of mix of humanity so that it's not really relevant, I guess you'd say, to come from a male perspective. And in the old days, it was so rigid that I have a friend who did Memoirs of a Geisha, and he's a he, and it's in first person as a female. So it was that, stringent, but that has long since passed.
And Carol, just give you the opportunity for the shameless plug. How does someone get a hold of you? They're looking for audiobook narration coaching.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I am at coaching@carolmondavo.com. And I also coach, commercials, narration, short form narration, promos, but I would say audiobooks are my bread and butter still. And I certainly have been with them and teaching that genre probably, the most in these.
So coaching@carolmondaVO.com.
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah.
Carol. So nice that you're here with us tonight. Thank you.
I love it. I love being here. Thank you so much.
Okay. A question from Gary, who says he's leaning towards the e-learning genre. Any thoughts on getting e-learning work because Voice 123 is not working for him? You know, it's funny, Gary. Some of my most lucrative e-learning projects I have scored off Voice 123. I did an extensive veterinarian e-learning program that was cast from Voice 123. I did a big one for Coca-Cola on handling hazardous materials, like, you know, for their truck fleet, making sure that their drivers were handling materials appropriately. So Voice 123, don't give up on it, because there is some reasonably good e-learning stuff there. But does anyone else have thoughts on info or advice for Gary on picking up e-learning work? In the past, Gary, we've had participants on this call who have recommended, there's a couple of e-learning associations, and these e-learning associations, and honestly, the name escapes me right now. I'm sorry about that. But I think if you just went to Google and did a search for e-learning association or e-learning, conference or something like that, the association would come up pretty quickly. And again, they put on these conferences, and we've had narrators on these calls that have either gone to these conferences and just wandered up and down the aisles and introduced themselves to these various e-learning speakers and have had a reasonable degree of success.
Get out of it.
Anyone else have any thoughts on picking up e-learning work?
Graham, this is Carol again. I just wanted to mention that Robin Lay, last name L-A-I, does, I think, either exclusively or mostly e-learning casting. And he works out of John Marshall Media, which is in the Film Center in New York City. I believe it's 630 9th Avenue. But if you check out John Marshall Media, Robin may be working in, his own company and renting space there, but I think that there's some overlap. So I guess just calling the reception at John Marshall might be a good start anyway.
Fantastic. So Robin Lay, L-A-I.
That's right. Robin,
Fantastic.
R-O-B-I-N. Yep.
Thanks very much, Carol. All right. Do you do some work with John Marshall?
I do. I often will be recording there. Lots of different audiobook companies who do not have a studio will, rent out studios for narrators. So I work there for Macmillan or Brilliance, but also Blackstone has its own little dedicated studio at John Marshall as well. So I work there as well.
Very cool. John Marshall Media definitely has a good reputation. So was interested in hearing whether you had actually done work there or not. That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's a great guy. He's John, really accessible. So if anyone else is interested in, they do everything from demo recording to they can help engineer your book, etc.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions, and it's open topic night. So any questions at all with regards to voiceover? Doesn't matter what genre, whether it's home studio related, perhaps performance related, business development, any questions are welcome. Doug Turkel just posted, by the way, into the chat box, a link to the big DevLearn, which is, that's the big conference that happens every year for e-learning developers. DevLearn 2018. And Doug, thank you so much for posting that link in the chat box. So those of you interested in e-learning, strongly recommend you hit that link up and take a look at what's there. Other questions, other comments with regards to the biz, performance, home studio, any specific genre? Just unmuting a few people here.
Hey, Graham.
Hey, Jeff, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay, thanks.
Good.
I'm trying to determine whether it's a good idea or even how to break into trying to market myself to some local businesses here to do their telephone systems.
Mm-hmm.
Their messages and their, if you want to get to this guy, press 1, blah blah blah. But I don't. I've tried Google Foo, and I'm trying to find how to get into that, and if there's a special technical things that need to be dealt with, if it's a special file type or anything like that, and I can't find anything on the web. Does anybody have information that they've done it themselves or know somebody who can point me in the right direction?
Well, I do a fair amount of IVR work, or interactive voice responses. So phone prompts, IVR, phone trees, they're all the same. It all means the same thing. And I do a fair amount of that work. There tends to be a couple of, well, not a couple. There's many. There's 20 or more fairly large companies across the U.S. and elsewhere as well. One of the big companies I do work with is in the U.K. And the thing about doing phone prompts is that it's all about volume, because you don't get paid very much on a per prompt basis. It's pretty meager, actually. So my advice to you is, rather than trying to approach some of these small businesses directly, you're better off getting on the roster of one of these companies that does big volume in phone prompts. Because, I made, $8,000 or $9,000 last year in just doing telephone prompts, but I'm doing them 15 and 20 at a time. And unless your local business happens to be, Verizon or something like that,
right?
Most of the number of prompts that any one of these small businesses is likely to need is probably not that many. I mean, if you did, 8 or 10 or 12 or maybe even 20 prompts for a small business, that's great. But that's a lot of business development effort to put into, and even if you're getting paid $10 a prompt, which you probably won't, that's a $200 job. So it's a tough go doing them one at a time.
I understand.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
companies to look for, that you said some of the big companies that do that.
Yeah, if you do a Google search for IVR or telephone prompts,
Okay.
they come up fairly readily. The company that I do some work with out of the UK is called PHMG, and you're certainly welcome to look them up and send your information into them if you'd like. Again, that's P like Peter, H like Harry, MG Media Group, PH Media Group.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just making a couple of notes here. Anybody else online with us tonight that has had some experience doing telephone prompts in any fashion, whether you're doing them kind of for small businesses, or if you're doing them on a larger scale, like for one of the larger kind of aggregators of phone prompt business? Anybody have any advice or any experience there? Okay, let's leave that one on the table then. If anyone wants to, very sick. Continuing to unmute a few people here. If anyone wants to add to that telephone prompt thread at some point throughout the evening, feel free to do so. Who else has got questions for us tonight?
Okay, I'm sorry. I have a question which is about plugins slash processors slash, I don't know what the official lingo is, but I'm looking at an RX, the RX Elements, which apparently has 4 different aspects of addressing the processing of recordings, and I just wondered if anybody uses that and or another program and or another plugin that might work for reducing noise floor and mouth clicks and that sort of thing.
I got it for you, Carol.
James.
Hi, Carol.
Hi, thanks.
Get the RX6 standard. Don't go with the elements because you won't get the mouth declick.
You're the second person to tell me that the standard is worth it, and it's not that much more expensive, I guess.
Well, if you go to what's it?
Sweetwater.
Sweetwater, and you talk to Jason there, you'll get a discount for it.
Oh,
and
gee.
then hook up with Don Barnes because he is the RX guru.
Barnes, yeah, I've heard of him.
BARNS.
Yeah.
His not YouTube, his Facebook group is called Audio Rescue RX. He knows everything there is to know about RX6.
Oh, gosh. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
So you do think it's a good,
yeah. Well worth it. Especially if you're doing this stuff at home, it will save your bacon.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Yeah, I use RX6 practically every day, Carol. It's the mouth declick alone is worth the price of admission. It really is.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
And yours is standard as well?
Yep. I just bought the standard. There's a big price gap between the Elements package, I think, is like $129 or something like that. And then the standard package maybe it's $249 or something like that.
It's something like that. But if you want to go to the
it's $1,000 to get to the Pro one. So
and you don't need that.
Yeah.
That's more for music production.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Wow. Great. Thanks, guys.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with the whole IZotope family of products, they specialize in various noise reduction plugins for Adobe Audition or Pro Tools or even Audacity. You can use their plugins in any one of those pieces of audio software. And they do things like de-hum, de-click. It removes mouth noises. It's very effective at some of those, audio repair kind of things. So if you're doing long form narration, that's really quite essential. I mean, for long form narration between RX6 and the Waves DeBreath plugin, which, I mean, DeBreath is a bit of a misnomer because it doesn't have to actually remove the breaths. It can just reduce the volume of the breaths, reduce the loudness of the breaths by a certain amount that you can specify. And I use DeBreath every day as well when it comes to narration.
And it's on sale for $29 right now.
You're kidding.
No.
That's amazing because normally it's like $99 or something.
Yeah, it's usually $99 or $129 or something, but it's on for $29 right now. Get it. Even if you don't use it, have it in your toolbox.
For $29, it's the best $29 you'll spend today. Yeah.
The other thing too was I got IZotope Neutron 2, which is a little pricey, but it is really, really a nice plugin.
And what does it do that RX doesn't.
It's completely different from RX. If you're using compressors and EQ and all that kind of stuff, there is a thing in Neutron where you just do click on this thing called Track Assistant, and as you're playing your file, it will go through your file and basically EQ and compress and do all these things that it does all by itself. And you can adjust the settings later if you don't like what it is, but it will detect that, yes, this is a voiceover, this isn't an instrumental, so this is voice, and it will do the EQing and everything. And the end result is you sound like you. You don't sound like it was manipulated at all. The original Neutron did some really funky things, and they really improved it. I use it on all my audiobooks now. It's like not an all-in-one plugin, but it's really cool.
So what level of sophistication do you need to be like how comfortable do you need to be with computers and with plugins and stuff in order to be able to use that successfully? Do I need to be a bit of a power user, or can
not really? I mean, if you're just
use it,
yeah, if you're just going to go and use the Track Assistant, there's a little button on the top and it says Track Assistant, and if your FX plugins are activated and you're playing your recording, it just reads it and does it. It's a one button thing. It's amazing.
Very cool. Question from Paula. The name again for the DeBreath software is DeBreath. Honest, that's what it is, DeBreath, and it's from a company called Waves, Waves. If you just do a search for Waves DeBreath, it'll come up right away. And at $29 today, it's a steal. It really is.
I'll put a link in the chat box.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Back for a second to doing IVR. I can't remember who asked this now. Who was it? Steve did. Do I need to have an IVR-specific demo before approaching one of these larger IVR companies? That's a good question. I didn't. They actually found me. They searched me out on Voice123, and they were looking specifically for Canadian talent, for Canadian clients. And they reached out to me. So I don't know if you actually need to do a IVR specific demo or not. If I remember right, when I first signed on with them, they sent me a few sample scripts that they wanted me to record, which I did and sent back to them. And obviously I must have passed because I've been doing work with them for 5 years now. The other thing that I think it's important to recognize is that these are not the most discriminating of clients. And I'm not suggesting for a second that you shouldn't do your best work. You should always do your best work. But I think that as long as you speak and enunciate clearly, you don't read it too quickly, you don't completely, hit the wrong words and things like that, and as long as your studio sounds okay, then you're probably going to be just fine. James, thank you very much for putting that link in, and I'm just going to send it out to all the attendees here. There we go. Is anyone aware of trusted YouTube channels or podcasts that teach VO performance techniques? There's lots of them out there. We're not sure which ones to trust. One that I can suggest off the top when it comes to performance is a guy named Bill DeWeese, Billdewees. I'm not in love sometimes with Bill's kind of hard sell tactics when it comes to trying to sell his coaching programs and stuff like that. But to be fair, for a guy who, if you want to point to the guy that's probably put more free stuff on YouTube about voiceover performance than anybody else, it's probably Bill DeWeese. And you can go back through several years worth of his posts, and I got to tell you, his performance advice, they tend to be fairly succinct, like they're 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. They're not 30 minutes long. And each one of them is usually bang on. Like he's quite knowledgeable. So BillDewees is the guy's name. And I'll just jot it down here. Who else has got, there's a couple of guys that hang out here on OpenMicVO that have some technical channels, some technical info. James, who is it I'm thinking of? Who is it that does, is it Steve Gonzalez that does all of the...
Steven Gonzalez does all the Reaper stuff. He's got videos for Reaper both on the Mac platform and on PC platform, which are very comprehensive. Mike Delgadio, Booth Junkie.
Yeah, he's funny too.
Does a lot of things.
How do you spell Delgadio? It's Guido? G-A-D-E-L-G-A-D-U. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay,
I'm gonna put it in as G-A-U-D. Okay. Emily got it right.
Yeah, his YouTube thing is called Booth Junkie. He does a lot of mic shootout kind of stuff with home studio stuff.
I like him because he's just very funny.
He's very funny.
He's just himself. He doesn't try.
He doesn't shave. He doesn't comb his hair. He doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think the guy owns a brush.
I don't think so either. He's based in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. I like him. Who else has got? And of course I have to mention Dan Leonard and George. Dan Leonard and George Whittam post their
Voiceover Body Shop.
Yeah, Voiceover Body Shop, VOBS.
Every Monday night.
And it's every Monday night streamed live,
right.
But every episode gets posted to YouTube. So
almost the next day.
You can go back through 6 or 7 years worth of their stuff. So it's Voiceover Body Shop, VOBS. So if you just do a search for VOBS or Voiceover Body Shop on YouTube, comes up right away. No issues. That was a good question. Anybody else have any thoughts on trusted YouTube channels, or what about podcasts? Are there any good podcasts out there? I can think of there's a guy that comes up with a podcast called The Producers. It's Ryan Dreen. Let me put his Ryan Dreen, and it's called The Producers. It's a great podcast if you're interested in radio imaging or TV promo work. He does these interviews with all the best radio imaging people in the world. A lot of his guests are obviously American, but he's interviewed a bunch of people in the UK, in Germany, in Australia, in Canada. Definitely worth checking out Ryan Dreen if you have a moment.
We've also got VO Buzz Weekly.
VO Buzz Weekly, Chuck Duran, Stacey J. Aswad. Emily suggested that as well. They are on YouTube. Very good production values. It's really quite slick the way they pull it all together. Great interviews with all of the LA stars, coaches, and the talent and agents. So definitely worth checking out VO Buzz Weekly if you're not already subscribed to it.
Graham.
Hey, Blair.
Hey, I've got a list here under my bookmarks that I'll read to you. A podcast that I have enjoyed. Julie Williams has an interesting one where she interviews folks. Mike Lenz, and that's Lenz, has some great guests. John Melly does a great podcast on VO marketing, and his last name is Melley. Anne Ganguza and Gabby, I don't remember how to pronounce her last name.
Nistico.
Thank you. They've got VO Boss. That's really an interesting one. Kind of talks about the realities of running a business as a VO. Then I've got All Over VO with Kif Vanden, oh my goodness, Huvel. He's kind of a VO artist, a real star here in LA, but All Over VO. And I have one called the VO Meter. Oh yeah, that's with Paul and Sean. That's a great one, VO Meter. And then Michael, it's like Langzer.
VO meter as an METER?
Yes, that's a fun one. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the Voiceover Roadmap by Michael Langster, something like that. And he's got some great free like ebook stuff on marketing, email marketing for folks. So that's a really great one too. Just a few for you to think about.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing your list with us.
Sure.
Steve also mentions Gabby Nistico, in addition to doing VO Boss, which she does with Anne Ganguza, she has her own as well called The Gift of Gab. So just if you search Gabby or Gabrielle Nistico on YouTube, you'll come up with Gift of Gab as well.
Great. You know, she also has a lot of YouTube videos where she gives like a 2 or 3 minute recommendations on techniques and things. She's cool. So cool.
Awesome. More questions, more comments. We still have, 20 minutes or so left. Who's got some thoughts on the voiceover business? It's an open topic tonight, so any question about anything related to voiceover is welcome. Stephen Gonzalez just joined us. Stephen, we were just talking about all of the Reaper videos that you've posted to YouTube, so we gave you a little shout out there.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks so much.
No problem. Glad that you're here with us tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Who else has got questions? Comments?
Got a question. Graham, I've got a question.
Hey.
Okay, bad audio, but on ACX, I'm new there. When you go to search for books to audition to, and now let's say I've got 200 on audition, and it says it's closed. There's no warning. Am I missing something here? Am I not, because I don't want to click on 200 books and find they're all closed, even though they say they're accepting auditions.
Well, our resident ACX expert is James Romick. James, do you have any thoughts?
I don't know about being an expert, but when they're closed, it could be for several reasons. First of all, the rights holder may have already picked somebody to narrate it. The ACX may have pulled the book completely from the roster. It could have been offered and rejected by somebody else, or the rights holder decided they didn't want to make it into an audiobook. There are several reasons why it could have just disappeared. I have had 3 or 4 just recently disappear from my audition queue that I never got any kind of rejection notice for. So ACX is either too swamped or they're understaffed or something, and they're not keeping up with it because everybody wants to do audiobooks now. There could be a number of different reasons, but if it's gone, and don't fret it and move on to something else.
Does that answer your question?
And ACX's messaging system is notoriously very, very bad. So if you do hook up with a rights holder and you want to keep communication open, give them your personal email and do it that way. I had a project delayed for 2 weeks because of ACX's messaging system. My messages weren't being sent and I wasn't receiving any. It's notoriously bad.
And James, is that ACX is okay with you establishing direct communication with the rights holders?
Oh yeah, they don't have any problem with that. You can call them on the phone if you want to. It's agreements between you and the rights holder. I have been told by different people to keep personal phone conversations out of the mix and just communicate by email. That way it's more of a professional kind of thing. I have spoken to some of my rights holder authors, but that was early on and it seemed to go fine. 2 of them were not even aware that their books were being made into audiobooks because they didn't, they were just the authors. They weren't the rights holders. The right holder was somebody else.
Right.
But they were surprised and happy that it was being made into an audiobook. So, you know, they were thrilled.
Steve is obviously having some audio problems. So he sent through a text message to me. So I guess, James, his question is, these books are showing up on the accepting auditions page in ACX, but then once he clicks on it, it says closed. That sounds weird, doesn't it?
It is weird. And, you know, like I said before, not only is their messaging system screwed up, but their whole website, sometimes I think tonight they're in some kind of maintenance thing, so everything's going to be screwed up tonight. But yeah, there's a big banner across the thing, you know, we're in maintenance, please pardon our dust. They're revamping something, so maybe they're fixing the messaging system or something. But, you know, those weird anomalies do happen, and unless it's a book that you're really, really, really burning to do, you know, just to move on. It's not worth fretting over, honestly. There's always another project to do.
So Steve's comment to that is, thank goodness I'm not crazy then.
No, it happens to everybody.
He appreciates that, James. Thank you so much for answering that for us.
You're welcome.
Okay. Dolores asks, if I have plugins for audio repair, I guess that means like the ones we were speaking about earlier, IZotope, etc. Do I still need an audio interface like the Yamaha AG003? And the answer, Dolores, is they do completely different things. The purpose of an audio interface, well, the purpose of like the little mixer like the Yamaha AG03, it does actually a couple of things for you. Number one, it serves as a preamp for your microphone so that the tiny little electrical signal that's coming from your microphone gets amplified to, you know, something reasonable to feed into the second thing that this thing does, and that is an analog to digital converter. In order for your computer to be able to record the ones and zeros that your audio is, it needs to be converted into ones and zeros in the first place. And that's the other thing that the Yamaha AG03 does.
Well, there is also a third thing.
Oh, what's that?
There is an effects button on there, and there is a piece of software that comes not with it, but you download from their website, from the Yamaha website. And you can do things like reverb and all kinds of weird stuff, but you don't want to do that for voiceover. It's manipulated through the software, and then it goes back into the AG03, and you can save it as a preset or something like that. Right. But you don't want to fool around with that.
Yeah, George Whittam did a fairly extensive review of the AG03, and he actually liked some of the onboard processing that the Yamaha had. Like, it does have a fairly decent-ish compressor in it, as an example. You're right, James. Certainly, you wouldn't want to mess with the reverb and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but the thing is that you're doing it on the front end. So if you're messing with the effects that are built into the unit, you're also recording that. You're not recording raw audio. So you don't want to do that on the front end.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Do you know if it's engaged by default?
No, you have to turn it on.
Okay, so that little button that, because I have an AG06, and I haven't fooled with it yet. So the effects button is off by default then.
Yeah, it should be off by default. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. But Steve, you should play around with it a little bit though, because the software that Yamaha provides for free has a decent little EQ. It's got a decent little compressor. George Whittam was reasonably impressed with it. He thought it was pretty cool. If someone was doing like a podcast or something like that, he thought it was an awesome piece of gear.
Well, it's also got a talkback feature, which I have yet to fool around with, but it's kind of nice if you have a mic setup where you're getting direction from outside, and it has a talkback feature where you can hear whoever's talking outside the booth, inside the booth, but I don't know how to make that work yet.
Just a comment to Blair. Blair, the reason why that link isn't working is because there's actually two separate links in that thing that you sent through to me.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yes.
one of them ends at MHW, and then that's
I
a
see.
link that starts HTTPS : /
Yeah, I had you kind of minimized there. I see now the column was too small. I didn't notice that. Thanks, guys.
No problem. Still have a few minutes left. Who's got some questions for us tonight?
Hey, Graham, it's Trey here.
Trey, how's it going tonight, man?
Oh, well, boy, we've got some nice weather out here today. Wow.
There's some great weather here in Toronto today, man. It was, 65 degrees and the sun was shining. It was an awesome day.
I watched the grass grow today, man. I've got a question about power conditioners, especially if anybody's got some background in this, to confirm my understanding. As far as a high-end Furman power conditioner is concerned, when using that, does that certainly, for certain, eliminate any ground loop problems? So that I don't have to wire, when I put the studio together, I don't have to wire everything with a separate ground back to a common box, and then from there tie into the main ground going into the ground. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I don't know the answer. Stephen, do you know anything about this?
Yeah, actually, you want to make sure that you have all three, I call them all three legs of the electrical circuit done. You want your hot, you want your neutral, you want your ground. Whenever I'm here, South Louisiana, hurricanes come, or that sporadic, really energetic thunderstorm comes, and you have lots of lightning. That third prong, that ground prong, is really, really important. I've heard of horror stories of people who do voiceover studios and they only have the two prongs, the hot and the neutral, and they bring the neutral back to the ground, and it's like, oh my goodness, don't do that. Make sure that you have a dedicated ground. Personally, I use a Furman MX/2 or M8X2.
Yeah.
Basically, it's eight.
I have the same one.
Yeah, it's basically 8 outlets on one side, and then another outlet in the front of the unit, and it's only 1 U tall, so that's an inch and 3/4 tall. What I have is I have a UPS, and then my Furman plugs into my UPS, and then everything in my studio goes through that Furman, everything, and I have it wired with the ground, that dedicated ground that goes back to the common ground, and then into the ground.
Okay.
Trey, does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I will have an uninterruptible power supply first, and then either the power conditioner or the voltage regulator. I'm not sure which order, by the way, if you guys know anything about that, what order those two should go. And then, like you just explained, everything in the studio plugged into that power conditioner.
Yeah, I think the voltage regulator should come before the power conditioner.
Okay.
because once your once the electricity leaves the power conditioner, it's supposed to be in what's called a perfect sinuous condition, and that's the best for, of course, for electronic equipment.
Well, they're gonna love it in my studio. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
Trey, it sounds like you're building a first-rate studio there. I'm looking forward to hearing all about it once you get it complete.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stephen, you don't sound like you're from Southern Louisiana.
Well, it's actually a confluence of 3 different accents, and they all cancel each other out.
We still have a couple of minutes left. Who else has got some questions for us?
Hi, Graham.
Melinda, hello.
Hi. Yeah, I'm getting out there and online, and I'm looking up like agencies to go with and what they require, and they're all different. But I'm seeing some. I thought it was unique. Instead of seeing send us your MP3 demos, they're saying mail us your reels, and they mean snail mail. And I'm feeling kind of thrown for a loop, and I find that to be unique. And I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of new to all this, and I think they're in the dark ages. So what do you think about that? And what do I do about a loop? I mean, a reel. I'm sorry, a reel.
Well, what they mean a CD.
Okay.
Or you could even send it on like a USB key if you wanted to, but a CD is probably the safest. And the reason they do that is because if you send them an email with your demo as an attachment, it gets lost. Like they're not very good at figuring out how to save a special folder full of submissions. So what they prefer to do is literally they put one of those big blue postal boxes in the middle of the office, and they throw them in there. And then whenever somebody has a couple of minutes, they retrieve, 1 or 2 or a half dozen and go through and have a listen. So it's more about convenience in-house than it is about them being in the dark ages from a technology standpoint. They do know what they're doing. It's just easier for them to control this way. And the other thing is that it kind of weeds out some of the people who are less serious as well. If you have to actually submit something on a CD, and hopefully you'll put a little, a nice little cover letter in there and stuff like that, the people who are less serious just won't be bothered, or they'll send something and it'll be badly labeled or whatever. So I think that they like it because it kind of keeps, it makes people prove that they're serious about the business. That's for sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? That's a great question or a great comment.
I actually saw some comment about this on Facebook, and somebody responded with, don't just forget them, like blow them off. And
I think that's a huge mistake. I know that there's some big agencies that want mail submissions.
Yeah, I don't want to blow anyone off. I feel like, oh, how do I approach this now? But I appreciate your comments. So I guess I'll just try to save my demos onto CDs, I guess.
Yeah, save them onto CDs, burn them to a CD, and then add a nice little cover letter. Put it in a little jewel box so that it looks fancy when it arrives.
Yeah. One of the things you can do also is actually have your disk writer label your disk instead of having one of those paper sticky thingies that you print in the printer and you adhesively tape it on top of the DVD or CD. You can literally, there's something there's software out there where if you take the CD and put it upside down into the CD writer and you give it the information, it'll literally, and how you want it to be, it'll literally etch it on the CD so that it's nice and fancy. So it's labeled, and then you flip it back over for your actual, MP3s, demos, whatever you want to put on it.
Yeah, and those little machines aren't very expensive either.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about like CD writers. The CD writer itself will do it. You don't need any special hardware to do it. Yeah, it's all run by software.
Very cool.
Thanks.
And Steve throws in a comment as well that I had made the comment that you can, instead of sending it on a CD, you can send it on like one of those little portable flash drives or thumb drives. And the reason I pulled back on this, and is the same reason Steve brought up as well, is because sometimes agents are worried about, or anybody that's getting a thumb drive from someone they don't know, is that there could be viruses on the thumb drive.
Oh, good point.
And they're quite concerned about hooking up a thumb drive that they don't know anything about to their computer. So that's why I first suggested it and then thought better of it. And a CD is a better solution, because there's a lot less chance probably of there being an infection on a CD. Time for one last question. What's a good CRM? What's a good customer relationship management software platform for a beginner to work with? There's one out there that's been built by a lady named Danny States that is specifically made for voiceover, and it's called, what is it called? Give me a second and I'll find it. VoiceOverView, it's called. VoiceOverView, and it is a really great little software platform. It's not an application. It's all you do. You work with it entirely online. It's a SaaS solution, or software as a SaaS. What does that mean? Totally lost it. Someone rescue me here.
I was thinking sales as service. No. Oh.
Software as a service. Thank you. Right. It means that there's no actual application that you buy. It's a monthly subscription fee, and you just subscribe to it online. It's a great piece of, it's a great platform. So it's VoiceOverView, all one word. And it's run by Danny States, and she's awesome. She's very responsive. Always gets back to her emails like within hours. Very, very good. So highly recommend voiceoverview.com. And with that, we're going to call it a night. And we covered a lot of ground tonight. Some really, really good questions. I'm going to make sure that I copy the chat box. I'll make sure that gets into the show notes. It'll all be posted to YouTube. So if you're looking for some of the links that we spoke about tonight, they will all be in the notes section, the show notes section on YouTube when this gets posted to YouTube in the next couple of days. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. I really appreciate you spending an hour of your Sunday with us. Until next Sunday, book lots of work, and we'll talk to you then. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Graham.